Was smoking all my dragons, divine, righteous, almighty greats overachieving, never slacking. So this was posted by African Diaspora News Channel, and it said Black Britons laugh at Black Americans having Anglo last names. So I'm gonna hop right into this. This is pretty interesting. Definitely gonna be some things to talk about. Here we go. Original link in the description.
You know, one thing that we don't understand as Black Americans is that why everybody always talking about us, even when we're not in the room. We know the white supremacists talk about us like all day long. We get that. But there are some people in the diaspora at times that be talking about us because either they don't understand some things or they think they understand some things. Case in point, these, Black British, brothers on a podcast is going to be speaking about Black Americans. Now, I would say up front, this is not a representation of all Black British. There's some certified, definitely straight-laced people in the Black British community. So these guys do not represent the majority. They represent themselves. Let's go ahead and roll that.
They got white names, you know what I mean? Like, it'll be like something Thompson, you know what I mean? Yeah. You'll never see that in an African person. It'll be like Pascal, it'll be Hamada Gogo, it'll be, you know what I mean? Yeah, Kevin, da da da. Yeah. They're all, I don't know, like white people.
So something Williams.
Yeah, so.
White people, that's crazy.
Nigga
said that.
You know, one thing that
might be one of the most ignorant videos I ever seen. On my maternal side with my mother, she's from Igbo land. She's Nigerian. And then on my paternal side, American. I'm American, obviously born and raised, but that's where my maternal lineage comes from Nigeria. And my last name Harris. Here's the thing with them is, first off, if in their mind they think, okay, they have last names due to the transatlantic slave trade and that whole, it's like that whole time, how are you laughing at that? Why is that funny? Like, especially since we know that there was a lot of, there was African kings and that sold, other Africans into slavery. That's what makes that a little worse there. That's not funny. But even looking further into it, when you look at a lot of indentured servants who were coming over from Europe on those boats, who's to say some of them couldn't have been of darker skinned and already had a certain last name? Who's to say? There was so much traveling going on in history that we always think everything just comes from slavery. Who's to say that, there couldn't have been an Irish guy who was an indentured servant that worked his way out of indentured servitude and married someone who, and then passed the last name or such, like, it's just so many factors to just sit there and say, oh, they're just owned by white people. Like, that was very, very ignorant. Like this man said in the beginning, shout out to my so-called Black Britons out there that ain't ignorant, that don't just make statements like that. I just don't see how those kids could find that just so hilarious.
I could not stand about the pandemic. Let me tell you what. The pandemic got everybody and their mama out here podcasting. That was the biggest influx of people going to doing podcasts I ever seen in my life. Prior to the pandemic, it wasn't like this at all. And so now you got a bunch of people who's got a microphone, and they really shouldn't be having a microphone. They should actually go work somewhere else. I prefer them to go take their ignorance, do it in music. At least everybody won't pay attention to it sometime. But for those people who don't have no kind of education, well, the reason why Black Americans have names like Thompson, Scott, Jones, Johnson, etc., is because our family members who were enslaved had to take on the names of the slave master. So if you went to the Jones plantation, all the slaves on the plantation, the last name was Jones. And whatever first name. Everybody remember the classic movie Roots. Well, Kunta Kinte, you say his name was Kunta Kinte, and they beat him for him to say his name was Toby. They stripped everything from black folks, our religion, our languages, a lot of our cultural practices. They stripped that away. And we were socialized into European ideology, European religion, European everything. So you fast forward all the way to today. Black people in America still have those names. And yes, that is a conversation that I think we all should have in Black American society, is that, hey, you know, one of the best ways that we can actually separate ourselves from the white supremacists is to strip the last names away that we have. I think that's the conversation that we should have, because stripping the name away does not take away our citizenship or anything like that. You know, the people in the Nation of Islam, they always change their names. You know, they made, you know, but they took on, you know, what some people would say, you know, more Islamic names. That's what they took on. But it is a conversation to have. And I remember one time I actually had that conversation with my mother a few years ago. And I said that, I said, you know, sometimes that bothers me. I said, my name. I'll be honest with you, it bothers me. He said, well, well, I named you that. You know, you named after your father. I said, yeah, I know, and I love my father to death. I say, but the last name part is what bothers me the most. I say, because understanding the history, you know, there was a slave master, last name Scott. And we're still bearing the name of the white supremacist slave master, even to this day. I say, and that just bothers me. I say, because when I see other groups of people, they're not coming over here with the slave master's name. They're coming over with their own names. But like I said, that is a conversation for Black America to have, not other groups to be coming into that conversation because you didn't go through what we went through. You know, so please, can you find something? Why don't y'all talk about this? Why did we flee from our countries? Why did we run? Why didn't we stay and fight? Now, that's a conversation that I would like to listen to. I want to hear why you don't want to go back to your homeland. I would love that conversation. That's something I want to hear. But the names, that's our conversation to have. Like, everybody always in Black American business. Please stay out of it.
I understand his point of view. I just feel like personally there needs to be more research done because so much happened in history as far as for Americans, so-called Black Americans, right? That we don't. Once again, I hear so much, right? I do a lot of research, and we don't know what so-called blacks may have already been foundational Black Britons, so-called foundational Black Britons, that may have came over here who are already bearing those last names. I think that research needs to be, we need extensive research on that. And just as far as there was slaves who, or people who were also slave masters that were back then so-called color, so-called Negro, who would, who had their slaves. Now, there was all type of different things going on. Some people became slave masters when they, in order to and bought their relatives or whatever to free them in a sense, still have them slaved under them, but it was more so like a chess game. It's just so much that was going on that I do think there needs to be extensive research. I think we need to look into when those indentured servants were coming over here on them boats from these other places. Was there any so-called blacks that were on any of those boats that may have already been bearing a certain last name from somewhere else for however they got it or what? I think there needs to be more extensive research. I don't think people should just say all our last name, because that's more so like a conditioning. Like, we all came from a slave master. Now let's just, we're mad because this happened. But I just think we need to do more research because there's a possibility we could have been lied to about certain things. And that might not even be the full-on truth. So that's my standpoint on it. And as far as what he said about, these Britain kids, they're corny for that. That was corny, They definitely shouldn't be putting that type of energy in the atmosphere. Not cool. Not cool at all. To try to laugh at other people and say, because they're owned, or like, how is that? That was actually pretty evil. It's kind of evil. So hopefully they reflected on that and understood that how messed up and evil that is to laugh about. That's nothing to laugh about. I wouldn't laugh about anybody, any race, any whatever, anybody pain or anything they've been through. It's nonsense. But with that being said, original link in the description. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Keep it respectful, please, and keep it mature. And I will be back with more soon. Much love, guys.